Hi, Chad. How are you?
I'm well. Sorry, Taylor called me unexpectedly when we were strategizing something, and I just lost track of time. But
You
my
chose you
apologies.
chose you chose
Too late.
Taylor you chose Taylor over me. How dare you?
I did momentarily. It won't happen again. I
All right, I
promise.
appreciate that.
All
We're
right,
good
you
with
got
that
it.
then.
All
So,
right.
Chad, I have to say you're the second editor I've had on in over like 415 interviews. I had Paul Hirsch early on.
Holy hell, Paul Hirsch. That's good company to be in.
It is. And I swear every time I think I understand an editor's job, I don't. It's like producer for me. No matter how many times somebody explains it to me, I still don't get it. Like I mean, I
Nobody
get
knows
parts.
what those people do.
I get parts of what I get parts of what an editor does, and I think I'm looking at it like too simplistically, right? I feel like everybody knows what an editor is in the role, but like I'm always uncertain of how much power you have in like the final product and how that works. Give me a way of looking at it, or maybe somebody watching wondering exactly what an editor does, because I know it's a hard job, I know it's a difficult job. I just don't know the intricacies of it.
It's really difficult to explain. It's become less difficult over time as kids that are like young get their hands on phones that they can make little movies for themselves. So they understand what the act of it is. But in a professional environment, it is a big role. So to break it all down, I mean, so there's several hundred people that go out and shoot a script. There's actors, there's crew people, there's lighting, all sorts of things. And it's on a big show like ours, it's several hundred people, and then they take the footage that they've acquired and they send it down into assistants, pipeline, all that, and eventually it comes down to one person. It's either, and that's the editor, so it's me or someone else on our team who's an editor, and we assemble every time you see something on screen or you hear a line of dialogue, an editor put it there. Everything. So every picture, every time you change picture, every time you hear a sound effect, an editor usually placed it there first. So everything, the entire program, everything that you see was placed there by an editor. And what's interesting about the job is that there's different levels of responsibility that different editors have. I mean, you could be someone who puts all that together, and then a director or producer might come and says, all right, change every single thing. And you work with them and you try to find a version of the show that feels right. It's like, what, that shot where you're close on someone's face, make it wider. Okay, go back to the shot where we can see the entire room. So you go back and forth, and you manipulate the picture and the sound, and you change it to what that person wants it to be. Um,
Can that be frustrating, Chad?
well, it can be. I mean, especially when you're young, it's frustrating. I think
Yeah.
that the older that you get and the more experience that you get, certainly my feeling has been that like there's about here's how I like to look at it. There's like a 90% objectively good and bad in TVs and films, and then the last 10% is subjective. It's up to the viewer. So whoever gets to have the last word, you're seeing their 10%. As I like to call it. So, if I'm in a session with our mixers and they've done fabulous work, and I'm like, you know what, I like this, but I would like to hear something a little bit different. This is just my 10%. And so, when it's a show, when Taylor shows, he's the last eyes on it. So if we want to change something, we change it for him. It's not frustrating to me anymore. It's just like, okay, people are different. They want to see different things, and it's an art form that everyone experiences subjectively on their own. Even though millions of people see it, each person is having a subjective experience, and so I don't take it personally, and that's what I chalk it up to. And I think to have a long career doing this job, you have to have an attitude at least similar to that. You just can't you can't constantly be fighting someone else's opinion, because it's what they're just telling you how they think and how they feel and what response material is creating for them.
Yeah, you can't take everything personally. You drive yourself bonkers if you did that.
Yeah.
Do you ever run the risk of upsetting like an actor who said, "Oh my god, I can't believe that scene didn't make it," or a composer whose piece of music didn't make that cut, or a cinematographer whose beautifully shot scene doesn't get in the final edit? Are you
All of
the
those things. I have done all of those things, and I
yeah?
know, and not just like I conceptually know, like I actually have had that response. I've been doing this job for over 20 years. So like, yes, you're gonna upset a few people, but that's you can't think of it that way, and that can't be the thing that is the overriding principle that guides my decision making for sure. If you can tell when you get footage in, and some shot was huge, elaborate, you can tell like there's a lot of gear there. This is expensive, big cranes or whatever the set decoration was, whatever the props are. You can tell when a shot was really hard to do. But if it doesn't advance the story, you can't put it in. If it stops everything in its tracks, then that means it doesn't get to be in the TV show or in the movie. And those can be difficult decisions. to explain to people, but they're not really difficult to make, because from when I'm putting it together, I have to just trust what my instincts are. That's why I've been hired. That's why I am here, for my instincts. And then once I've put that together the way I would like to see it, then I show it to Taylor, and then we make it what Taylor wants to see. And usually he and I are pretty damn close. And that's why we've had a successful working relationship for so many years at this point. But it's a small number of folks that ultimately make that final decision on what goes in the show and what doesn't make it.
Yeah, for sure. What kind of kid were you growing up, Chad? You cinephile like me? Were you a nerdy kid growing up? Couldn't stay away from the television?
I was very nerdy. But I wasn't like really a cinephile. I loved movies. I remember going to see E.T. in the movie theater when it came out. I remember standing in line for Return of the Jedi. I did all those things. I am a person of that age. Yeah. And so I remember the spectacle of movies. When I was younger, I would write and put on, like, I'm talking 7 or 8 years old, I would put on little plays in my backyard with my friends, and I would make we would just make these little detective stories. I didn't have a video camera. I grew up in the 80s. I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. Video cameras were incredibly expensive when I was young.
Big time.
Yeah. And they were huge, and we didn't have one. In fact, I didn't have a video camera really until I got to film school. I didn't even have a cell phone when I first got to film school 20 some odd years ago. So it was just, but the imagination was there, and I had this swing set, and I had this character. I was a detective. My friend was always the bad guy, and no matter what the play was, it ended with him being either shot by me or something, and he'd have to fall off the swing set because my friend was willing to do that. So we had a stunt in every one of these plays that we put together, and we would just show them my family, my mom, or whoever. So I was imaginative like that. I was a musician. For about half my life, I was clarinet, saxophone, trombone. Used to compose electronic music. So music was a big part of my life. Still is a big part of my life. So I spent a lot of time, a lot of years ignoring that and pretending that I was going to go to medical school and be a doctor. But really, it was the fear of not wanting to acknowledge that what I wanted to do was make movies and tell stories. And it took me into my 20s to acknowledge that about myself. But once I did, I never looked back.
Yeah, that's really good. What can you say? And you went to USC Film School, right?
I did, yeah. I went to UC Davis as an undergraduate. I have a sociology degree. Again, I was going to be pre-med, switched as a sophomore. And when I switched my major as an undergraduate, I decided I was at least going to apply to film school. And I applied to USC, and thankfully I got it.
Yeah, that's excellent. I imagine your background with music helps you create, in your editing journey, right? Because I had Andrew Lockington, whose score in
he's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, his score in Lioness was incredible, and he's like a super nice guy, and it was like,
yeah,
I mean, talk about a guy that, like you, close to Taylor trusts him on his projects, and and I could see why with both you guys why Taylor does trust you and really goes to you guys often.
When I'm doing a show with Andrew, we talk almost every day. So we did Mayor of Kingstown season 1. I did, and then I was working on some of these, other shows when they did season 2. So I wasn't involved in that. But season 1, I talked to Andrew almost every day. When we were doing Lioness, I talked to Andrew almost every day. Not the relationship with an editor and composer isn't always that close, but I feel fortunate that mine was with him, and if I think it's ideal if it is that close. And yes, I'm able to communicate musically. Like Andrew is a professional expert composer, so I am someone who's a better than layman's understanding of music, perhaps, just from my background. But I do know how to speak in emotional terms about what I'm looking for, or in terms of the energy that I'm looking for. So he will, what Andrew likes to do, which is incredibly helpful to someone like me, he'll just send a bunch of sketches and ideas about how the themes of the story are speaking to him. And I'll just start dropping those in the cut and see where they fit. And then what's fun about our relationship is he tells me this all the time. I will put things in places that he wasn't expecting, but that he likes, and then he'll take that and vamp on it. And then ultimately all of that goes to Taylor. But yeah, he and I, there is a lot of trust in the group of folks that have been working with Taylor for a long time in some of the key departments. And so we are just off playing in a sandbox together, Andrew and I, for quite a while, and then show it to Taylor, and 9 times out of 10, he's happy with what we've come up with. And if he's not, he tells us, and we make changes. But the musical background is incredibly important because music is a very powerful tool. It can be overused. You have to be careful. You can't use it everywhere all the time, or else it just becomes, it stops meaning anything. So one of the, to me, one of the benefits of understanding music well is also knowing when to turn it off, and just when to let the words and the script tell the story. So, again, then that's all the job of an editor. These are all things that you wouldn't think of an editor doing, but it is very much a part of the job. And it's probably my favorite part of the job, to be honest.
Yeah. And, the life of a composer can be one of solitude, as far as professionally speaking, not their personal life. The life of a cinematographer, maybe a little more, there's more people involved. where would you put an editor on that scale? Like, where would you?
Like in the composer realm, I mean, it depends. You know, when I did reality TV, I'd be in an office with 25 other editors and producers, and then we were constantly talking to each other and bouncing ideas off. Well, in our early seasons of Yellowstone, there were 3 of us editing, but we were in the same building. We would all the time, hey, come in here, look at this. What do you think about this? And we would show each other cuts of scenes that we had worked on with my assistant editors. Always when we were working together in person, like, hey, come take a look at this. Tell me what you think. Those opinions were. Everyone's opinion was valuable to me. So now it's more that COVID isolated us as much as anything else. There's a stereotype of editors being locked into dark rooms and not talking to anybody. It's really not true. I mean,
Right.
The best editors I know are very social people who understand how to communicate with other people, because the job requires an understanding of human motivation, behavior, emotions, and being able to read cues from people. So you tend to find the best editors are people who have an easy time getting along with others, or at least understanding other people, and who are very social. And so I certainly count myself in that group. Now I see what's nice is I have a young daughter. I have a 6-year-old and a wife, and I edit at home, and I see them all the time, which was not the case before. So it's flipped a bit. Whereas I spend a lot of time in rooms with other people that I work with. And I also see Taylor. Even though he lives in Texas, I see him every week or two. I fly out there.
Wow. Can you watch a movie with your wife or daughter and not be an editor? Like, can you be a fan, like not related to your work? Can you watch something in the theater or at home and not have the temptation to say, I probably would have cut that. I would have done that.
I can, but it's hard. Like when I think a movie is great, I will realize after the fact that I wasn't thinking about the craft of it at all. When I'm really into a movie.
Yeah.
And when I don't like a movie and I get bored, I'm like, I would have done this or that or the other. And I'm not alone in that, but you just start picking apart things. Yeah. And for me, like how House of Beast cut, what shot we're on. You never know unless you've cut the movie yourself, if like maybe they didn't have the shot that you would have loved to put there. Maybe there's an editor on the other side of that was sitting in that chair going, man, I wish I had this shot. And I'm watching as an audience member like, why didn't they use such and such? Yeah. So but yes, I do have those judgments and opinions. And they're instinctual, so I don't really turn them off, but they just sort of become very, very quiet the more engaged I am in a movie. And I still love losing myself in the movies. I mean, that's still a thrill. Watching movies or watching shows with other people is still my favorite thing to do. It's the best part of the job.
Such a great quote. Let me ask you this before we get into specifically some of the work you've done. Sure. How did you and Taylor develop your rapport?
Randomly, I was a reality editor for a long, long time. I worked on The Hills. I worked on The Bachelor. I was a reality editor for about 15 years. And in that life, I had a good friend of mine who was a reality editor as well. And we were close. Like he was, one of my closest friends in the business. We were just always like, from those early days, we just always ended up in the same shows. Often our offices were close together. Well, separately, he had been friends with Taylor Sheridan for 20, they're going on 25 years at this point, just friends, like outside of the world of TV and everything, when Taylor was, a starving actor trying to make it in Los Angeles, and they stayed friends the entire time. So when Yellowstone season 1 happened, my friend, the reality editor, went to work for Taylor as a producer, like on-set producer for him. Right. And when they needed help editing. And so Taylor asked if he knew any great reality editors, and my friend very fortunately gave him my name. I flew out to Utah and met Taylor. I cut a scene for him, and he liked it, and we just hit it off personality wise. And I have only worked for him ever since that day.
Being a reality editor to me seems like tricky business because you have people's actual lives unfolding. I feel like it's a little more from outside looking in, maybe being a little naive. It can be tricky because you're dealing with people's lives. You're seeing stuff that is just off the wall compared to what you're doing now. Am I looking at it correctly? Is it a different beast? Reality television?
It's not as different as you might think. It's all storytelling. The right. difference is that there's like a stigma about reality TV. Reality TV is awesome to work. It's really fun, and it's really hard. Yeah. But because you're shaping a story the way that you're still shaping a story. People want to still see the same things that they see in a scripted show. People falling in love, getting angry. Like all revenge, all of these things. But you have to craft it out of just mountains and mountains and mountains of material. And as far as the responsibility that you have to other people's lives, with the shows that I worked on, which were these, they became these big, kind of like legacy franchise reality shows. People signed up for what they signed up for. I mean, they knew what they were getting into. You can't really think about that when you're putting a show together. Just as, in a scripted show, there might be something that's really horrifically violent or uncomfortable. You don't think about that at the time. You're just putting together the best version of the material that you possibly can. You become aware of people's lives and all that. And in some of these reality shows I worked on, you see in the press the ramifications of some of the things that would happen. But ultimately my responsibility is to put together the best version of the show that I can. And then, I don't have control of the other stuff or how people react to it. So it was kind of a strange job to do, but I did enjoy it. And I didn't go to bed feeling bad about myself. I was usually like, I slept well at night, knowing that like we were just putting together the best version of what we had. These people had signed up for it. They were willing participants. And most of the times they were very happy. And if there was embarrassment, it was minor and temporary.
Absolutely, I get it. So I just finished. I didn't just finish. I finished Special Ops Lioness. What a wonderful last episode!
You like it?
No, I like it. I loved it. Andrew's music plays a huge part, and I want to tell you what I told Andrew, and you tell me if you agree or disagree. Mm-hmm. I love the way that Cruz looks beat up through the entire series. I love that they didn't put like where she's injured one episode and 5 minutes later the bruise and everything's gone. Like I feel like it adds to the depth of her character because she is going through hell. She has been through hell and back, and she just can't get out. She just can't get out. And I love the way her appearance looks like she's been in a boxing match every single show. I don't know. I thought it added to her to the character.
I'm glad you felt that way. I agree. I mean, we really beat the hell out of her in episode 2. I mean, the episode is called The Beating, and that was actually weirdly the first episode that I put together was that episode 2. So it was just dove right into all that.
Hard to watch that episode.
Yeah, it is hard to watch, and that was the goal. Unfortunately, I mean, it was again wasn't really hard to put together because you see the artifice of it when you're putting it together. There's an action, there's a cut. I know all these people are fine, but my goal when I put it together is that if I am uncomfortable watching it, that makes me feel like I've done my job properly, right? And that even knowing all of what I know about what's happening behind the scenes, so yeah, very uncomfortable, but necessary really to define her character. And Liza did performed that role exceptionally well, and I think that her appearance and always being like battered and bruised was a really important part of her character. And she never got away from it, and she was always having to explain it. She was having to explain the bruises on her bodies, when Alia first sees it, and make up a lie about how she had been injured. And so it's a constant thing that she's battling, and she's constantly trying to disguise her identity in every way. And it's sort of like the world is just beating her down, and she has to just try to maintain calm through all of it. So anyway, it worked for me, and I'm glad it worked for you as well.
And Zoe's character, I felt like is going through the same type of turmoil as far as keeping her family life together. I mean, what's happening to her daughter is just god awful. I mean, I have a daughter, you have a daughter. So it's like I'm thinking about her the whole time. Then I'm thinking about what she's going through in her personal life. Then she's trying to keep the defense of the country together in her own little way or big way. Yeah. But like even you can see the turmoil on her. I don't know. It's just those little things, Chad, I really love about this show. Those little
I'm things. Glad. I mean, Zoe's she's a obviously incredibly talented actress, but she's also a mom. And so she just, if you're a parent, those things hit you differently. It doesn't matter like how old your kid is, or even like if you had a son, not a daughter, like you just watch that and you put your child in that character in that moment. And I know that she did that. I've never asked her that, but I know that she did that. Yeah. And it's, what's on a smaller scale, all of us go through struggles like that, where maybe you're aware that your child is maybe not physically hurting, but is sad on some day at school, and you have a job to do, and you have to do that job. And that job is important to your family as well, because it brings in the money that puts the food on the table or pays the rent or the mortgage or what have you. So, her job is in the show is life and death, and it's national security, but it's a struggle that every parent or person who has people that they're responsible for faces. And so the universality, and that's not a word. It's something we all feel. It's something we all experience.
I get it.
And that's one of the things that I actually like about Taylor's shows, is that for as grand the spectacle might be from time to time, there's stories about parents, people in love, people worried about death, people worried about, their sister, brother, mom, dad. And so you can relate to his stories and his characters because he's writing about things that we all experience just on different levels, and maybe like not as grand, but we've all been there. You know what I mean? Right. So I think that's where the connection, to me, I've had time to think about this. I believe that's where at least some of the connection to his stories comes from for people.
My favorite show of the year by far. Loved it.
Awesome.
The other one I want to tell you about is 1923, right? So I absolutely love 1923.
Yeah,
I
me too.
wish the Africa parts. I wish that was a major motion picture. I wish that part was, because it's got a very out of Africa feel to it. It's maybe the most stunning piece of television I've seen that's not in the theater. Like, I feel like I couldn't believe what I was watching. I was like, "Are you kidding
Yeah.
me?"
I couldn't believe the footage that came in, and I appreciate you saying that. I mean, it's funny you say theater because we actually did talk about it for a while. There was a discussion about, do we maybe try to put these episodes into movie theaters first and then put them on TV? I mean, it was discussed. The scope and the scale of that show was astounding, and we had crews that went all over Africa. We were in South Africa, Tanzania. I mean, we went all over the place. We had a B unit that just went and shot animals for 2 weeks. And so all of those animals that you see, like the zebras, the elephants, and we had drones and helicopters and all that stuff, and they were just capturing animals and scenics and all of that. And the work that all of that work pays off, and that you just really feel immersed in that place in a way that like you say, is not common in a television show. Certainly, it is grand and epic. And I had the good fortune of actually seeing some of it in a movie theater because we did our premiere at the Wynn Theater, and so we had it in a movie theater for 500 people, and that was when we premiered it in December of last year. So seeing it there, and I got to see it, because I had to do the tech screenings for a few times, so I got to see it a few times in a theater. I'm like, man, this is how this show should be seen. I wish I could just bring everybody here, all millions of people here, and have them watch it. So very, very special show, and a real commitment to making that. To giving it that feel on behalf of the studio, Taylor, and everybody. It's an incredible experience.
I don't know how Taylor writes all. Like, I read somewhere where he's just always writing. I don't know how he does it. Like, I could barely hold my life together with like 2 kids and a job and podcasting. I mean, I love my life, but it's like I can't imagine having like his life and writing, or your life and all the busyness surrounding that. But when it comes to Yellowstone, right, a lot of question marks and so forth. But looking at what's come before this. That it's been such a wonderful show. Like, I can't remember this many people being drawn. Like, they just showed it on CBS, right? Because
I'm actually doing those CBS cuts. One of the things I'm doing right now is that I have to take the Yellowstones that we made originally, and I have to reformat them to air on CBS. So there are different standards and practices. You're not allowed to say certain words on CBS that you can say on Paramount Network, and I usually have to take out 2 or 3 minutes per episode. So I'm literally like in the middle of that process right now. When I'm done talking to you, I'm going to go back to doing it.
How tough is that, Chad? Because there's a lot of
it's not as tough as you might think, and really a lot of why it's not tough comes from my background as reality editor, just like editing dialogue and doing all those kinds of things. It comes very, very naturally to me. So I was worried about it when they pitched it. I was like, oh, geez, how the hell are we going to do that? And then I started getting into it, and I was like, okay, this isn't that bad. I mean, what we did is we reconstituted the editing project. So like, I have access to every piece of footage that I had access to when I was cutting the show originally in season 1. So because of that, you're not tied to, like usually when you see a movie and it's been like dubbed for broadcast, they can't change the picture. So you get a lot of mother flubbers, or they have to put all these stupid words in for the swear words. Yeah. We don't have to do that because I'm allowed to re-edit the show and take the profanity out in a way that hides it, where you wouldn't even necessarily know that it was ever there. So when you watch it, and I show all of the cuts to Taylor before we approve them and send them off to CBS. But he and I are watching, and we're like, yeah, this still feels like Yellowstone, and I'm proud of the fact that show holds up even with some of the things taken out, some of the more objectionable things taken out. And then really like a lot of the picture doesn't have to change. I mean, the violence is kind of funnily enough, like allowed to be as violent as it was.
And almost 7 million people watched that first episode.
I heard that. I was so happy to hear that.
That's insane. That's insane.
It is. It's a show that has a ridiculous reach. And look, I've said this before. We were just kind of making it for a couple of years, and it had a following and a nice following, and then it just exploded into this pop culture phenomenon that is really gratifying. Not because it means that people are connecting to it, and that's, if you do this for a living, if you're in the business of entertainment, hell, having an audience and having them connect to something that you've done is the greatest gift. It's the biggest thrill. It's why we all do it. So I'm thrilled to have been a part of that show from the very beginning, and it's been amazing to watch how people have responded to it. So yeah, who would have thought, right? You never know what's going to land with people, but it really has.
Yeah, a few more questions, Chad. Thank you for all this time. I really appreciate it. So I don't know if this is a question better for Taylor, but I think you're qualified to answer it because you've probably seen him quite a bit. Taylor must absolutely love James Jordan. He must think the world of him as an actor, because he's in everything. Wind River, he's in. I don't have that up on the screen, but like, it's amazing the faith he has. I mean, it goes back to his faith, like in you and other people that but he really loves the way James Jordan brings his presence to the screen or something.
James Jordan is a very good dude, and yeah, they're friends. I mean, like Taylor, when someone is in his orbit, Taylor is one of the most loyal guys I have ever known, and I've personally benefited from that for sure. For the last 6 years, and a lot of the actors will come in and like Dawn Olivieri, who was in 1883 as the sister, and then is like kind of the femme fatale in season 5 of Yellowstone.
Yeah, she's stunning,
he just and she's a fantastic actress, a wonderful person. But when he has the opportunity to kind of and directors do this, they'll have like their stable of actors that they go to whenever they can. And so yeah, James Jordan is one of those guys for Taylor. Great guy, very versatile, really funny. Always trying stuff. He actually, in my mind, has the best moment in Those Who Wish Me Dead. I cut that movie for Taylor, his last
another great movie,
Angelina Jolie. And he has this moment towards the end of the movie that just makes me cry every time I see it. When he finds the woman at the end and her husband has died. So he's just a really versatile, wonderful guy, and he fits into a lot of what Taylor needs. He's in 1883. He's the cook who gets shot up with all the arrows and stuff. So yeah, it goes. Loyalty is one way to look at it, and just when he finds someone that is talented, he just wants to use them as often and everywhere that he can. So,
and he can clearly handle it too. So
yeah, he can do just about anything. That guy.
Last question: what is your favorite? If this is it's probably an unfair question, what is your favorite Taylor Sheridan moment in any project? Is there a scene that you like more than? Is there anything that sticks with you over your time with him? Are there a couple of things as far as scenes and moments on film?
It's actually not a hard question. The last 5 minutes of 1883 is probably my favorite thing that I've ever done in my career as an editor. And I cry every time I watch it, and I edited it. I cried when I read it. And so for those that haven't seen it, I mean, spoiler alert, but the main character dies, and we've seen her fall in love and defend her family and become a warrior. She dies, and then we see the postscript of what's happened to all these folks. And we see LaMonica Garrett's character and staking his land and all of that with his new family, with the woman that he loves and her 2 children. And then we see the episode is titled "This Is Not Your Heaven." That's what episode 10 is titled of 1883. That's just, it was titled that way from the very beginning. And then we see Elsa in her version of heaven and what that is to her. And it's so beautifully done and so beautifully written. And I remember reading it going like, holy hell, if we can execute this half as well as it's written, we've really got something. And we did. We really did. Ben Richardson directed that. We see that she's with the man she loves, and that is her version of the afterlife. That is how she is spending the rest of eternity. And it is just this. It's really, really beautiful and very satisfying. And I'm incredibly proud of it. It gives me chills to even think about it. So yeah, that whole series was really special. I got to be on set a lot. I got to know that cast really well. I was screening for them all the time. That experience was tremendous, and I think it's that piece of work is the best thing that we have done together, in my opinion.
Yeah, great answer. Chad, thank you for all your hard work. I certainly
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. Yeah, you're super talented at what you do, and thank you so much for this time.
Thanks for having me. Really good to talk to you.
Take care.